Gary, you've been with this franchise, watching along since day one. Just your visceral reaction to seeing this day and Juan Soto signing a deal to become a New York Met.
I was thinking about the conversation changers in Mets history, right? The times when the Mets took something and with one move made it bigger than it was. And the first one I remember was Keith Hernandez, right? Signing Keith, getting Keith in a trade in '83, and then even more so re-signing him that winter. That changed what had been a losing stretch in Mets history into something much different. The trade for Mike Piazza in 1998 took a good little team and turned it into a potential championship team. Those are really the only moves that resonate the same way. The Carlos Beltran signing in 2005 was big. It was the biggest free agent the Mets had signed to date, and it took them to a different level. But this is something extraordinary. This is something completely different. A player this young, this talented, this already accomplished, a championship player who enhances a team that already went to the league championship series last year, and to have him through the prime years of his career, I think it's a complete game changer, and it's easily the biggest of all of those moves that I mentioned.
And I think when you mentioned conversation changer as well, game changer, certainly over the last 3 days when I was in Dallas, you could sense a conversation shift in the industry about the New York Mets. And I said this on the air the other night, but think if the Mets would have come out and outbid everybody by $150 million, and that's clearly the reason that Juan Soto came. Still great, but it's a different conversation than to have so many teams in the range and Soto sit down and say, no, this is the organization I'm putting my faith in. And so when you look at the last few years under Steve Cohen's ownership, and specifically last year with David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza, how much do you think the perception change has allowed for moments like this now to take place?
See, I think it started with Steve Cohen's ownership and the fact that he had the resources to compete, right? Because you can have as many systems in place as you want and as much of a family feel that Juan Soto got from talking to Steve and his family and engaging with them. But without the money, none of that happened. So I think we always knew that this was possible for the Mets to play in this ballpark and be perceived as a team that could compete and could treat their players better than other teams treat them, and all those factors that go into that. And I think little by little over the last 5 years, we've seen those systems start to be in place. And I think that Alex Cohen has had an enormous impact, and I think Steve mentioned that finally she's getting the recognition for some of the things that she's done to make players feel more comfortable here. But David Stearns has a lot to do with that, too. I mean, I think that there's a lot of knowledge in the marketplace now. I think that agents and players understand that there are certain organizations that have a knack for threading the needle in making sure that they maximize their resources, not just in free agency, but in trades, in minor league free agent signings, and all the ways in which you can make your club better. And I thought in year one with David Stearns, we saw all of that. And Carlos Mendoza is a big piece, too. I mean, he won that clubhouse from day one, and through the darkest of times, kept it and got it to the sixth game of the National League Championship Series in a year where it looked like none of that was going to happen. So I think that this changes the conversation for the fans and the people who maybe haven't been paying attention. But I think all of those things have been in process for the last few years.
We have had the privilege doing this job, watching Juan Soto up close and personal a lot, especially when he was with the Nationals, and it was 19 times a season. So just from a pure baseball perspective, what did you always appreciate most about him as a player, and how much do you think those skill sets enhance what's already happening here?
Well, I mean, from day one that we saw Juan Soto, he had a presence in the batter's box that you don't expect a 19-year-old to have. I mean, he was in the big leagues at 19, and he had the selectivity of a much more veteran player, and that's only become better and better as he's gotten more mature and learned the league a little bit better. But that's what stood out from the beginning. This was a guy who brought hitting skills, but he brought discernment, and he was able to wait for his pitch in a way that I haven't really seen a slugger since Barry Bonds. That's what Barry Bonds was at his best, a guy who could take pitches a sliver out of the strike zone with impunity and take his walks and not worry about it, but then when he got a pitch in his zone, he attacked and he hit with damage. That's what Juan Soto's been since the start of his career, and I think the other piece about it is the fact that even when he was playing with some Nationals teams that were not as competitive, he never gave away at-bats. And, you know, the way he approached every at-bat was the way we saw the Mets play over the last 4 months of the season. So I think that he's very much in that mold of a guy who is going to bring it every at-bat. Now, you know, the pieces of his game are what the other pieces of his game are. He's not going to steal bases. He's not going to be a Gold Glove outfielder. But he's a good enough hitter that none of those things really matter.
Yeah, and I'm just really happy that you brought up Juan Soto when he was with the Nationals teams that weren't very good, because to me, and I think I said this during our Hot Stove shows as well, that was what always stood out to me, is after that team won a World Series and it was essentially stripped down to its studs, we'd watch Soto as a 21, 22, 23-year-old kid, and he was still so mature that he would not chase pitches just to make something happen. He'd take 3-4 walks a game, but then if you made one mistake, he was on it, and it was a double or a home run.
And, you know, what also impressed me was last year with the Yankees, because when the Mets played the Yankees, they weren't the Yankees that eventually made it to the World Series. They were a team that basically had two guys in their lineup. I mean, Luis Severino said it out loud, but we all knew that, right? They had Soto and Judge and nobody else, and it didn't change the quality of it as a bats. You could see that a star player in that circumstance would expand his strike zone, and we saw it some with Judge. We never saw it with Soto, and that to me was amazing too, the discipline he was able to show in that kind of circumstance.
Gary, great seeing you. We're going to have some fun this year.
Steve, very nice orange tie. I really am enjoying it a lot. You really have done a great job upping your repertoire, and I'm looking forward to more of that in the future now that, you know, this is a $765 million player kind of team.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm going to get to work on that right now.